Emotions shape every decision, reaction, and interaction in your life, yet most men allow them to control their actions instead of mastering them. This audiobook will teach you practical strategies to take command of your emotional responses, transform impulsive reactions into deliberate actions, and build lasting confidence, resilience, and self-discipline. By applying these techniques daily, you'll gain clarity, improve relationships, and navigate life's challenges with calm authority. Dive in to unlock the power of emotional mastery, enhance your personal growth, and become the man who responds with strength and purpose. Subscribe now for step-by-step guidance and transformative insights. Number 1. Master emotional triggers before reacting. The moment a jaw tightens, the chest heats, and the words you did not mean to speak claw their way out, that is the exact moment skill matters more than intention. Emotional triggers are not enemies to be fought with force. They are signals, old wiring trying to solve a new problem. Mastering them begins with this simple truth. A trigger is information, not an order. Training that distinction into reflex takes practice, discipline, and clear steps you can use today. A trigger often arrives as a fast, physical storm. Heart rate rises, breath shortens, vision narrows, thoughts sprint toward worst-case scenarios. That physical response is real and immediate. The smarter part of you, the part capable of reason and choice, moves slower. The gap between that first surge and the action you take is where power lives. The first practical commitment is to widen that gap. Build space between impulse and response so choice can catch up. Start with a catalog. For 3 weeks, carry a small notebook or a note on your phone and record every time strong emotion takes over. Write the situation, the first physical sensation, the immediate thought, and what followed. Be brutally honest. This is neutral data gathering, not judgment. Over time, patterns emerge. Certain people, phrases, or contexts repeatedly flip your switch. Seeing these patterns turns vague discomfort into strategic targets. Awareness is not a feeling. It is a tool that maps where to focus effort. Name the feeling the moment it appears. Say to yourself quietly and precisely, anger, shame, fear, or frustration. Naming slows the brain's leap into narrative and reactivates the thinking part. It is a tiny, effective act of separation. Emotion exists, but it is not the whole self. Practice naming aloud when alone so it becomes automatic when needed. Next, build a reliable physical anchor to interrupt the cascade. A breathing practice that lasts 30 to 60 seconds is ideal. Breathe in through the nose for 4 counts, hold for 2, exhale for 6. This recalibrates heart rate, soothes the nervous system, and buys thinking time. Pair the breath with a subtle tactile anchor. Press thumb and forefinger together. Tap the top of your wrist, or press your palm flat against a surface. Over days, condition that touch to mean, calm now. When the trigger comes, the breath and anchor become a trained pause, but pause is not weakness. It is strategy. A good rule to use in the moment is the 10-second rule. Count to 10 slowly, while taking steady breaths. In many situations, 10 seconds is enough to convert reactive behavior into rational response. If a 10-second pause feels impossible at first, start with 3 seconds and build. The habit of pausing rewires your automatic responses because decisions made after a pause are more aligned with values and long-term goals than with immediate relief. Build simple if-then plans. Implementing intentions that remove decision-making under stress. Pre-commit to precise actions. If someone cuts me off in traffic, then I will count to 10 and say it's okay. Or if criticism sounds personal, then I will ask for one specific example before responding. These scripts are not rigid. They are stabilized. When practiced ahead of time, they reduce the mental load during the moment and protect dignity in relationships. Reframe the story that fuels the emotion. The mind tends to create a narrative that inflates small events into threats. Practice quick cognitive reappraisal by asking 2 short questions. What is the evidence? And what is a less catastrophic explanation? In most heated moments, evidence for the worst interpretation is thin. Reframing doesn't erase feeling. It restores perspective so action comes from choice rather than panic. Stoic practice offers a powerful rehearsal technique. Imagine the trigger before it occurs. Visualize the scene fully, the words you might hear, the gestures, the environment, and then mentally rehearse your calm response. This is not daydreaming. It is targeted training, rehearsing difficult conversations. Imagining them going the way you want strengthens the neural pathways of composed behavior. Do this for 5 minutes in the morning and again before high-risk events. Design your environment to reduce avoidable triggers. If late-night scrolling inflames jealousy or rage, set a cutoff time for social media and put the phone in another room. If certain people consistently provoke, set clear boundaries. Limit contact duration, change topics, or choose different settings for meetings. Environment design is not avoidance of growth. It is smart allocation of energy so resilience can be built without constant wear. Practice small exposures to build tolerance. If criticism fires you, intentionally seek brief, low-risk feedback from trusted sources and observe the outcome. Discomfort in controlled settings teaches the body that the emotion is manageable and that the feared catastrophe rarely follows. Each small exposure builds tolerance and shrinks the intensity of future reactions. Use the body to change the mind. Posture, facial expression, and pacing influence emotion. When a trigger hits, adopt a grounded stance. Feet shoulder width, shoulders back, jaw unclenched. Lowering vocal pitch and speaking slower not only signals confidence to others but calms the nervous system. Acting calmer actually makes you calmer. Create a ritual for recovery after a high-emotion episode. A 5-minute practice, deep breaths, a short walk, a cold splash of water on the face, or a brief journal entry helps the nervous system return to baseline and prevents carryover. In the journal, note what happened, what triggered the reaction, what was done well, and what to improve next time. This postmortem is not self-flagellation, it is targeted improvement. Track progress in measurable ways. Set a goal like, reduce reactive outbursts this month from 5 to 2, or pause for at least 10 seconds in 80% of triggering moments. Keep the tracking simple and honest. Celebrate small wins. Consistency compounds. The man who pauses once every day builds a different baseline for himself than the one who does not. Understand the role of rest in lifestyle. Sleep, nutrition, and exercise matter. Lack of sleep reduces the brain's capacity for self-control. High sugar and irregular meals spike emotion. Regular physical training, weights, running, martial arts, gives the body a reliable outlet for stress and reinforces discipline. These are not peripheral supports. They are the foundation that makes emotional training possible. Practice speaking from values rather than from immediate feeling. Before responding, ask, which action aligns with the man I want to be? If the answer is respect, patience, and clarity, choose words that reflect those values. This turns every interaction into a chance to practice identity, not just to build accountability into the process. Share the goal with a friend, mentor, or coach, and ask for feedback on specific behaviors. An accountability partner can point out blind spots and provide reality checks when emotional blinders appear. A trusted outside perspective often sees patterns that the person inside the storm cannot. Expect setbacks and plan for them. Mastery is not absence of failure, but persistence through it. When a reactive episode happens, apply the recovery ritual, journal the experience, and schedule a short deliberate practice session devoted to that exact scenario. The most important measure is not how many times a reaction occurs, but how quickly and effectively it is corrected and learned from. Finally, adopt a stoic frame. Control what is within control and accept the rest. People will say hurtful things. Drivers will cut you off. Bosses will misread intentions. These things happen. The true sphere of influence is how you respond. Every pause, every named emotion, every prepared script is an act of sovereignty. Over time, these acts accumulate into character. The man who trains his responses becomes known, not only for restraint but for reliability, for leadership, and for quiet strength. Practical exercises to begin now. Keep a 3-week trigger log. Practice the breath and anchor exercise twice daily for 5 minutes. Write 3 if-then plans for common situations. Rehearse 1 difficult conversation each morning for 5 minutes. Implement 1 environmental change this week that reduces unnecessary triggers. Track the exercises and review weekly. The work takes time, but the gains are immediate. Clearer decisions, deeper relationships, less shame, and a steadier mind. This discipline is not about suppressing emotion. It is about mastering its expression so life flows with purpose, rather than being pulled by impulse. Each moment of calm is a vote for the identity you want. Each pause, each name given to a feeling, each practiced reply is an investment in a life that is steadier, truer, and more powerful. The path forward is clear. Widen the gap between stimulus and response. Use breath and naming to create space. Rehearse your chosen reactions. Design your environment, and practice relentlessly. Over time, the storms will still come, but the harbor will be stronger. The man who masters his triggers builds a life defined by choice, rather than by reaction. Number 2, pause, process, then respond calmly. Emotions arrive like unexpected visitors, sometimes calm, sometimes violent, often demanding attention before reason has a chance to speak. The difference between a man controlled by his feelings and a man who controls them lies not in the absence of emotion, but in the pause between impulse and action. That pause is a battlefield where mastery is forged, a space where clarity emerges from chaos, and where a single deliberate choice can redirect the trajectory of a day, a conversation, or even a life. The first step in cultivating this skill is recognizing the urgency that emotions impose on the mind. Strong emotions, anger, fear, jealousy, frustration, push the brain to react instantly. They narrow perception, accelerate heart rate, and distort reality, making minor problems seem catastrophic. The natural response is to act immediately, to speak, to defend, to lash out. But responding without processing is surrendering to the moment. The very act of delaying action, even by a few seconds, transforms the power dynamic. Emotion becomes a signal, not a commander. To pause effectively, it helps to physically anchor yourself. The body reacts before the mind does, so controlling the body is often the fastest way to influence thought. Stop whatever movement you are doing, plant your feet firmly, relax your shoulders, and take one intentional breath. Even a single deep inhalation slows the nervous system, interrupts the reflexive response, and signals the brain that the situation can be managed. This physical pause buys the necessary mental space to think diligently, rather than impulsively. Processing is an internal dialogue that turns raw emotion into insight. It begins with asking simple, precise questions. Why am I feeling this? What is within my control here? What is my ultimate goal in this interaction? These questions shift focus from reaction to strategy, from ego to effectiveness. Processing is the lens that clarifies what is relevant and what is noise, distinguishing between what demands action and what merely triggers energy without purpose. One method to deepen processing is to visualize the situation as if you were an observer. Step outside the immediate experience and see the interaction as though you were watching it happen to someone else. This detachment is not coldness, it is perspective. Observing objectively allows a man to notice subtle cues, understand the motives behind others' words, and predict potential consequences of his responses. Decisions made from perspective are more strategic, less reactive, and more aligned with long-term integrity. Another essential tool is framing. Emotions are often intensified by the stories we tell ourselves. A minor criticism becomes a personal attack because the narrative interprets it that way. Reframe the situation before responding. Replace "this insult is unbearable" with "this comment challenges me. How can I respond constructively?" Reframing converts energy that would fuel reactivity into energy that fuels clarity and control. This mental shift is subtle but profoundly effective, turning a potential eruption into a deliberate choice. Silence is one of the most powerful tools in this practice. In moments of high tension, the urge to fill the space with words is strong, but refraining from immediate speech preserves dignity and power. Silence communicates thoughtfulness and strength, and it prevents impulsive language that often creates regret. By holding back, a man signals to himself and others that his mind governs his actions, not passing emotion. This does not mean avoiding confrontation. It means entering it prepared and deliberate rather than blind and reactive. Practicing calm responses requires intentional rehearsal. Anticipate likely situations that provoke strong feelings and imagine responding with composure. Visualize the tone of voice, the words, the body language, and the outcome. Over time, this mental conditioning strengthens neural pathways that support calm, considered behavior. The brain begins to treat composure as the default, making it easier to access under pressure. Rehearsal transforms theory into instinct without suppressing authenticity. Breathing remains central throughout this process. Controlled, measured breathing regulates the nervous system, reduces adrenaline surges, and slows heart rate. One technique is a 4-part cycle. Inhale for 4 counts, hold for 4 counts, exhale for 6 counts, pause for 2. This rhythm is simple, portable, and powerful. Consistent practice during calm moments reinforces the nervous system so that when stress arises, the body responds predictably, allowing the mind to engage processing rather than fleeing into reflex. Equally important is learning to distinguish between immediate impulses and considered intention. Not every emotional surge demands action. Some feelings signal a need for reflection, others a need for setting boundaries, and some simply need acknowledgement before moving forward. By categorizing emotions, urgent versus informative, transient versus persistent, a man can decide which ones merit immediate response and which ones are best addressed after thoughtful evaluation. This discernment separates reaction from strategy. Accountability amplifies growth. Share the commitment to pause and process with someone trusted, such as a mentor, coach, or friend. Have them provide feedback on instances where composure was tested. External perspective identifies blind spots, reinforces habits, and provides encouragement. A man cannot measure true progress in isolation. Reflection from trusted allies sharpens awareness and strengthens resolve. Journaling complements pause and process. After a tense moment, record what triggered emotion, the thought patterns that followed, and the eventual response. Reflect on what worked, what could improve, and how future reactions could align more closely with values. This written reflection cements lessons, making the mind more adept at recalling composure and subsequent challenges. Over time, these entries form a roadmap of emotional growth and strategic response. Lifestyle factors deeply influence the ability to pause and process. Sleep deprivation, high stress, and poor nutrition impair cognitive flexibility and self-regulation. Exercise, adequate rest, and mindful routines strengthen both mind and body, enabling faster recovery from emotional surges and clearer processing. Discipline in daily life is not ancillary. It is the infrastructure that supports emotional mastery. Small, consistent lifestyle choices compound into resilience, creating a foundation for calm, deliberate action. Every interaction, no matter how small, is practice. From a tense meeting at work to a heated discussion at home, each scenario is an opportunity to exercise pause, engage processing, and respond calmly. Over time, this deliberate approach becomes a default, and composure becomes a hallmark. The man who masters this does not suppress feelings. He channels them with precision, preserving integrity while achieving outcomes that honor both self and others. The consequences of neglecting pause and processing are immediate and cumulative. Words spoken in haste, actions taken under duress, and reactions born of unchecked emotion create regrets, harm relationships, and erode credibility. Conversely, each moment spent cultivating patience, perspective, and strategic response compounds over time, building a reputation of calm reliability and wisdom. Emotional restraint becomes both shield and sword, protection for the self and a tool for influence in the world. To initiate this transformation, begin with small, deliberate steps. The next time a strong emotion arises, consciously pause, take a slow breath, and ask one clarifying question about the situation. Record the outcome. Repeat daily. Each act, no matter how minor, reinforces neural pathways that favor conscious choice over instinctive reaction. The habit grows quietly but steadily, invisible at first, yet profoundly altering behavior and character. The ability to pause, process, and respond calmly is not a single skill, but a composite of awareness, discipline, perspective, and reflection. It requires patience, persistence, and a commitment to self-mastery. The man who embraces this principle gains not only control over immediate reactions, but also over the trajectory of his life. Calm, deliberate action becomes a hallmark, influencing every conversation, every decision, and every challenge. Emotional storms still arrive, but they no longer dictate the path. The man who pauses directs his own course, grounded in purpose, guided by reason, and defined by steady strength. Number 3. Build emotional discipline under pressure. Pressure is the proving ground of character. It is easy to remain calm and composed when life flows smoothly, when obstacles are minor, or when no one is watching. The true test occurs when stakes are high, deadlines loom, or conflict arises. Emotional discipline under pressure is not a trait one is simply born with. It is forged deliberately through repeated practice, conscious effort, and unwavering commitment. Every moment of tension is an opportunity to train the mind, sharpen focus, and cultivate resilience that carries into every area of life. Begin by understanding how pressure manifests. High-pressure moments activate the body's fight or flight response. Adrenaline surges, muscles tighten, attention narrows, and thinking becomes reactive. Under these conditions, emotional regulation is not natural. It must be learned. Recognizing the physiological signs, racing heartbeat, shallow breathing, tight jaw is the first step in taking control. Awareness alone interrupts the autopilot, allowing deliberate action to replace impulsive reaction. Training starts with observation. Noting how pressure feels in your body is the foundation for mastering it. Mental rehearsal is a cornerstone of emotional discipline. Visualizing high-stakes situations prepares the mind for reality. Picture yourself in a tense meeting, a heated argument, or a challenging performance. Imagine every detail, the sounds, the movements, the dialogue. Practice responding with calm, measured behavior. Rehearsal builds familiarity with stress, reducing the novelty that often amplifies emotional reactions. When the real situation occurs, the brain draws upon these rehearsed patterns, allowing composure and clarity to emerge naturally, rather than being a forced effort. Controlled breathing acts as a stabilizing anchor in intense situations. When stress peaks, deliberate breaths help regulate heart rate and nervous system activity. A simple technique involves inhaling deeply for 4 counts, holding for 4, exhaling for 6, and pausing for 2. This rhythm provides a predictable internal signal that overrides panic. Practicing this technique consistently under non-stressful conditions strengthens its effectiveness, making it an automatic tool for emotional regulation when tension arises unexpectedly. Developing emotional discipline under pressure requires training the mind to focus on controllable factors. Pressure often arises from elements beyond personal control, other people's behavior, unexpected setbacks, or the unpredictability of outcomes. Distinguishing between what is controllable and what is not allows a man to conserve energy, reduce reactive tension, and direct attention toward meaningful action. By accepting uncontrollable circumstances and concentrating on responses that can be influenced, the mind maintains clarity, while emotion is kept in check. Creating micro-challenges is another powerful approach. Intentionally placing yourself in controlled pressure scenarios builds resilience. These challenges can take many forms: timed tasks, public speaking in small groups, or deliberate exposure to minor stressors. Each controlled encounter provides a safe space to practice composure, patience, and emotional control. Over time, the cumulative effect of repeated exposure strengthens the nervous system, teaching the body and mind to remain grounded even in genuinely high-pressure circumstances. Clarity of purpose provides a stabilizing anchor when pressure escalates. When a man knows his priorities, values, and desired outcomes, emotion becomes a guide rather than a dictator. In the midst of chaos, focusing on purpose allows decisions to be made in alignment with long-term goals rather than fleeting feelings. Purpose transforms tension from an obstacle into a vector for action, turning potential panic into disciplined energy channeled toward meaningful objectives. Self-talk is a subtle but vital tool in maintaining composure under pressure. Words shape thought and behavior. Replace instinctive phrases that escalate stress. "I can't handle this. This is too much," with empowering statements. "I am capable of this challenge," One step at a time, focus on what I can control. Repeatedly reinforcing constructive self-talk rewires the mind, reducing emotional volatility and fostering confidence that persists under stress. Establishing rituals prior to high-pressure situations prepares the mind and body to respond with discipline. A morning routine, brief meditation, or physical warm-up primes focus, clarity, and resilience. Rituals signal to the nervous system that preparation has been undertaken and that composure is expected. Consistency in these practices reinforces stability and provides a foundation upon which emotional discipline can thrive when unpredictable stress. Boundary setting is an essential element of maintaining emotional stability. Pressure often intensifies when external demands overwhelm personal capacity. Clearly defining limits, whether in relationships, work, or commitments, prevents unnecessary stress and preserves mental bandwidth. Saying no, delegating tasks, or postponing non-essential responsibilities are not signs of weakness. They are deliberate strategies to sustain composure and ensure that critical pressures can be met with focused energy rather than scattered emotion. Reflection after high-pressure moments solidifies growth. Immediately following an intense experience, analyze the response. What was done effectively? What triggered tension? And how could the reaction improve next time? Documenting these insights in a journal transforms experience into data, allowing a man to track progress and adjust strategies. Consistent reflection reinforces learning, reduces repetition of mistakes, and accelerates the development of emotional discipline. Strengthening physical resilience supports emotional regulation. Regular exercise, adequate sleep, and proper nutrition enhance the body's capacity to manage stress. The mind and body operate as a unit. A well-conditioned body reduces the intensity of stress reactions, allowing the mind to exercise discipline more effectively. Physical conditioning is not just about strength or endurance. It is about creating a stable platform from which emotional control can be exercised even when external pressures surge. Emotional discipline under pressure also requires understanding the temporary nature of emotional intensity. Emotions flare, peak, and subside. Recognizing this natural rhythm allows a man to ride the wave of pressure rather than being swept away by it. Patience becomes a strategic tool, and the knowledge that the intensity of any situation will diminish reduces urgency-driven errors. Composure becomes a deliberate choice reinforced by temporal awareness. Accountability heightens discipline. Sharing objectives for emotional mastery with a mentor, colleague, or friend creates external reinforcement. Constructive feedback identifies blind spots and provides guidance when personal perception may falter. A structured accountability system ensures that lessons from past pressures are applied consistently, reinforcing habits that maintain control and reducing the likelihood of reactive mistakes under future stress. Integration of mindfulness amplifies the capacity for discipline. Simple practices, such as observing the breath, scanning bodily sensations, or noticing thought patterns, anchor awareness in the present moment. Mindfulness creates a buffer between stimulus and response, preventing impulsive action. It allows the man under pressure to evaluate options clearly, respond strategically, and sustain composure even when external chaos is unavoidable. Finally, resilience grows from repeated application. Every instance of pressure faced intentionally strengthens emotional regulation, neural pathways, and confidence. Over time, situations that once triggered panic or rash behavior become opportunities for strategic, deliberate action. A man who builds emotional discipline under pressure becomes someone who thrives where others flounder, who remains steady amidst volatility, and whose influence expands because calmness and clarity attract trust and respect. Begin practicing immediately by identifying one high-pressure scenario likely to occur this week. Prepare intentionally, visualize the event, plan your response, rehearse calming techniques, and commit to reflecting afterward. Each encounter becomes training, each moment a step toward mastery. Emotional discipline under pressure is not about suppressing feeling or pretending composure. It is about choosing action aligned with principles, strategy, and long-term goals, rather than succumbing to the immediate intensity of emotion. Over time, this deliberate practice transforms temperament, fortifies character, and cultivates a life defined by strength, clarity, and measured action. Number 4. Replace impulses with conscious choices. Life constantly presents moments that tempt reaction before reflection. Impulses arrive uninvited: a sharp remark, a sudden frustration, a fleeting desire. Acting on them without thought may bring immediate relief, but long-term consequences often outweigh that temporary satisfaction. The ability to replace impulses with conscious choices transforms not only behavior but identity. Each decision made deliberately, rather than reflexively, reinforces character, builds self-respect, and strengthens control over one's destiny. Impulse is energy without direction. It feels urgent because the mind and body respond simultaneously to perceived threats or desires. Heart rate rises, muscles tense, and the mind races toward action. The instinct is powerful because it is ancient, designed for survival. Yet, modern life rarely demands immediate fight or flight reactions. A man who can intercept impulse and redirect it toward intentional action gains an enormous advantage over situations that would otherwise dominate him. The first step in this transformation is awareness. Notice when impulses arise and identify their triggers. They may manifest as anger when someone interrupts, frustration when plans are delayed, or desire when temptation appears. Observing the initial spark without judgment allows space to examine its source. Awareness alone does not suppress emotion, it illuminates it. By understanding the conditions under which impulses emerge, a man prepares the mind for intervention before action occurs. Next comes the practice of mental pausing. Even a few seconds of intentional hesitation can shift the trajectory of a reaction. During that pause, the mind can evaluate the impulse against long-term goals, values, and consequences. This is the moment where instinctive behavior transitions into conscious choice. A short delay may feel unnatural initially, but with repetition it becomes a tool that transforms habitual reactivity into intentional responses. Creating if-then strategies strengthens this process. Anticipate situations that trigger automatic reactions and design specific responses. For example, if I feel anger at criticism, then I will take 3 deep breaths before responding. Or if I am tempted to interrupt, then I will wait until the other person finishes speaking. These implementation intentions reduce decision fatigue under stress and make disciplined behavior automatic. The brain learns to substitute thoughtful responses for reflexive action through repeated practice. Reflection is another critical element. After a situation arises, examine the impulse, the response, and the outcome. Did the reaction align with your values? Could a different choice have led to a better result? Recording observations in a journal or mental review strengthens memory and reinforces learning. Over time, reflection creates a feedback loop. Impulses are noticed sooner, conscious choices become faster, and decisions increasingly align with long-term priorities rather than immediate gratification. Reframing impulses is a subtle but powerful technique. Rather than suppressing desire or discomfort, reinterpret it as information about needs, boundaries, or goals. Anger may signal a violation of principle. Desire may reveal a gap in fulfillment. Frustration may highlight inefficiency. Recognizing the underlying message allows the energy of impulse to be redirected productively rather than dissipated in reaction. Conscious choice emerges not from denial, but from intelligent redirection of natural human energy. Physical cues are also instrumental. Impulses often manifest bodily before the mind fully registers them. Clenching fists, tightening jaw, shallow breath. Training oneself to notice and modify these early signs creates control over the entire response. A deliberate inhale, a slow exhale, a straightened posture, or grounding the feet signals the nervous system to transition from reactive to deliberate mode. Body and mind are interconnected. Controlling one influences the other. Prioritizing values anchors choices in meaningful direction. When an impulse arises, ask, which action reflects the principles I want to embody? Decisions guided by integrity and long-term objectives are inherently more satisfying than reactions driven by fleeting emotion. Values act as a compass, ensuring that each choice builds identity rather than erodes it. Over time, behavior becomes predictable not because of rigid control, but because conscious choices align consistently with inner conviction. Practicing small, daily impulses builds skill. Minor temptations delaying immediate gratification, responding calmly to minor provocations, pausing before speaking, are training grounds for greater challenges. Mastery emerges not in monumental moments but in the accumulation of disciplined responses during ordinary circumstances. Each instance of intentional action strengthens the neural pathways that replace reflex with reason. Accountability reinforces progress. Share objectives for conscious decision-making with a trusted mentor, peer, or coach. External feedback highlights blind spots, provides encouragement, and keeps one honest. In high-pressure scenarios, accountability partners can offer perspective when emotion clouds judgment. The combination of personal discipline and external reinforcement accelerates growth and deepens mastery over impulses. Visualization enhances preparedness. Before facing predictable stressors or temptations, imagine the scenario and mentally rehearse deliberate responses. Picture the words, tone, posture, and actions aligned with intentional choice. This exercise primes the mind for action, reducing the likelihood of succumbing to reflexive impulses. Mental rehearsal converts abstract discipline into ready-to-deploy skill. Lifestyle factors amplify the ability to make conscious choices. Sufficient sleep, regular physical activity, balanced nutrition, and controlled exposure to stressors maintain the nervous system's resilience. When the body is well supported, cognitive functions such as reflection, evaluation, and decision-making operate at their peak. Fatigue, hunger, or overstimulation diminishes capacity, increasing vulnerability to automatic, impulsive responses. Mindfulness practice strengthens the mental space needed for conscious decision-making. By observing thoughts and feelings without immediate engagement, one develops a capacity to notice impulses early, creating a window for intervention. Mindfulness reinforces detachment from reaction, allowing choice to emerge from awareness rather than reflex. Over time, the mind becomes adept at maintaining clarity in moments of high emotional intensity. Language shapes perception and action. Replace internally reactive statements. I can't resist. I have to lash out. I need it now with empowering statements. I choose my response. I act from purpose. I control my behavior. Shifting internal dialogue transforms impulse from a force that drives behavior to a signal for conscious evaluation. Words direct energy. Deliberate phrasing channels impulses toward intentional outcomes. Resilience develops from repeated practice. In increasingly challenging situations, begin with low-stakes impulses, then gradually tackle more emotionally charged scenarios. The ability to act deliberately under minor pressure builds confidence and strengthens the habit, making it easier to maintain composure when stakes rise. Growth is incremental. Discipline compounds quietly, producing profound transformation over time. Account for recovery and reflection after inevitable lapses. Mistakes are learning opportunities, not failures. Analyze triggers, reactions, and consequences without self-recrimination. Identify adjustments and strategies for future encounters. The conscious choice process is refined through experience, and every misstep, when examined constructively, accelerates mastery over impulses. The ultimate power of replacing impulses with conscious choices lies in freedom. A man who exercises deliberate control over his reactions does not surrender to circumstance. He becomes a force guided by purpose, strategy, and integrity. Impulses remain. They are natural and unavoidable. What changes is the ability to redirect their energy, converting potential chaos into deliberate, meaningful action. Each choice reinforces identity, builds credibility, and strengthens the capacity to navigate life with precision and dignity. To implement this immediately, select one recurring impulse to focus on this week. Observe when it arises. Pause intentionally, evaluate options, and choose the action that aligns with values and long-term objectives. Reflect afterward on outcomes and adjust as necessary. Repeat consistently, gradually expanding focus to other impulses. The practice is cumulative. Each conscious choice not only mitigates immediate risk, but reinforces the mental architecture that supports disciplined, intentional living. Conscious choice is not denial of emotion or desire. It is mastery over the timing, direction, and expression of human energy. It transforms reactive instinct into deliberate strategy, short-term frustration into long-term fulfillment, and impulsive behavior into purposeful action. The man who masters this skill cultivates strength not only in specific moments but across his life, shaping interactions, decisions, and opportunities with clarity, self-control, and unwavering focus. Every impulse intercepted and redirected builds freedom, authority, and personal power, making each day a testament to deliberate mastery. Number 5. Strengthen self-control through awareness. Self-control is not an abstract virtue reserved for rare moments of heroism. It is a daily muscle that strengthens with attention and practice. The foundation of this strength is awareness, an honest, precise recognition of thoughts, feelings, impulses, and behaviors as they arise. Without awareness, self-control is blind. The first step toward mastery begins with noticing what moves the mind and body, understanding triggers, and creating the capacity to respond with intentionality rather than habit or impulse. Awareness begins with observation. Life is full of cues: a tightening in the chest, a sudden flush of heat, a racing thought, or a desire to react sharply. Each of these physical or mental sensations is a signal, a message from the mind-body system about the present moment. A man who cultivates self-control pays attention to these subtle indicators, recognizing them before they escalate into actions that may later be regretted. Observation is not passive. It is deliberate scanning of the inner landscape, the first act of mastery. Tracking patterns is an essential practice. Over time, impulses, reactions, and emotional spikes repeat in predictable ways. Keep a mental or written log of situations that test patience or provoke strong feelings. Note what triggered the response, how the body reacted, and how the mind interpreted the event. This is not judgment, but information gathering. Patterns reveal the underlying architecture of behavior, highlighting areas where self-control is strong and where it requires deliberate reinforcement. Awareness without this pattern recognition is fleeting. Combining observation with consistent tracking converts raw awareness into actionable insight. The next layer of awareness is noticing cognitive distortions. Thoughts are often rapid, automatic, and influenced by fear, pride, or past experiences. Many reactions are fueled not by present reality but by stories the mind constructs. By observing thought patterns critically, a man can separate facts from narrative, questioning assumptions. Is this truly a threat, or am I interpreting this correctly? Slows the cascade of automatic responses. This cognitive awareness builds the bridge between impulse and deliberate action, transforming reflex into choice. Physical regulation is a key component of awareness-driven self-control. The body often signals emotion before the conscious mind registers it. Heart rate acceleration, clenched fists, tense shoulders, shallow breath. These are not obstacles, they are guides. Recognizing these signs early allows preemptive action. Controlled breathing, a change in posture, or a grounding technique interrupts automatic escalation, creating space for the mind to exercise control. Awareness of bodily cues transforms the physical reaction into an ally rather than a runaway force. Emotional labeling is a precise and practical technique. Identifying the specific emotion that arises, anger, frustration, disappointment, envy, or desire, anchors awareness. Naming the feeling disengages the reflexive identification that often amplifies emotional intensity. Recognizing that I feel irritation rather than I am consumed by anger shifts perspective from self-judgment to observation. This separation is the cornerstone of self-control, allowing response to emerge from conscious decision rather than knee-jerk reaction. Mindfulness extends awareness from moments of stress into daily life. Through consistent practice, whether meditation, focused attention on breath, or deliberate observation of surroundings, a man cultivates a sustained capacity to notice internal and external cues before they demand action. Mindfulness is not escape from reality. It is immersion with clarity. It enhances the ability to recognize subtle triggers, reduce automatic responses, and approach challenges with measured composure. Anticipation strengthens self-control through predictive awareness. Consider upcoming interactions, responsibilities, or environments that historically test patience. By forecasting potential challenges, a man can prepare mentally and physically. Mental rehearsal, reviewing values, and pre-planning responses allow the mind to engage proactively rather than reactively. This anticipation transforms pressure into opportunity and uncertainty into a manageable field for disciplined action. Values-driven awareness serves as a compass when impulses tempt deviation. When faced with provocation, fatigue, or frustration, ask, what action aligns with my principles? Immediate gratification may urge one path, but awareness of long-term objectives anchors choice. Observing impulses and reflecting on values ensures decisions reinforce character and integrity. This dual lens, observing both internal signals and guiding principles, elevates self-control from mere restraint to deliberate identity-aligned action. Environment plays a subtle but powerful role in self-control. Awareness includes recognizing external triggers, noisy settings, negative influences, or excessive stimulation that undermine discipline. By consciously modifying surroundings, removing distractions, setting boundaries, or structuring routines, a man reduces unnecessary friction between impulse and intentional choice. Environmental awareness creates a supportive context in which self-control can flourish naturally, rather than through constant effort against avoidable triggers. The practice of reflection reinforces awareness. After moments of success or failure in exercising self-control, review the experience carefully. Identify what was noticed, what cues were missed, and what strategies worked effectively. Reflection converts transient awareness into durable skill, strengthening the ability to detect impulses sooner and respond more deliberately in the future. Each session of reflection compounds understanding, making awareness progressively sharper and self-control increasingly reliable. Incremental challenges solidify discipline. Intentionally placing oneself in manageable stressors or situations that provoke minor impulses serves as training ground. Each success, even in small-scale scenarios, strengthens the neural pathways that support controlled behavior. These deliberate exposures build confidence and resilience, so when high-pressure or emotionally charged moments arrive, the mind and body respond with composure rather than reflexive intensity. Accountability enhances the growth of self-control through awareness. A mentor, friend, or coach provides feedback on observed behavior and decisions, highlighting blind spots that internal observation might miss. Sharing progress and receiving constructive critique reinforces commitment to mastery. Awareness becomes both personal insight and a shared lens, accelerating learning and solidifying disciplined responses. Language and internal dialogue amplify awareness. Notice how self-talk frames situations, emotions, and impulses. Phrases such as, "I can't handle this," or "I must react now," intensify pressure, while deliberate statements like "I observe this feeling and choose my response" reinforce conscious control. Thoughtfully constructed language transforms fleeting awareness into actionable command, embedding self-control into daily cognition. Lifestyle factors cannot be overlooked. Physical fatigue, poor nutrition, and chronic stress diminish awareness and impair judgment. Regular exercise, sufficient sleep, and mindful self-care create a baseline of stability from which conscious observation and deliberate response become easier. Self-control is reinforced when the body supports the mind rather than competing with its capacity to notice, evaluate, and act intentionally. The ultimate benefit of strengthening self-control through awareness is freedom. Awareness illuminates the space between stimulus and response, empowering choice where previously there was only reaction. The man who develops this skill can navigate challenges, maintain composure under pressure, and act consistently in alignment with his principles. Self-control ceases to be a sporadic achievement and becomes a defining feature of behavior, shaping relationships, opportunities, and outcomes. Immediate application begins with focused observation. During the next week, consciously note each moment of emotional surge, desire, or impulse. Record the situation, physical cues, thoughts, and potential responses. Engage reflection to analyze patterns, identify missed signals, and reinforce strategies that support controlled behavior. Practice deliberate pause and response to these cues, applying breathing, posture, or cognitive reframing techniques. Consistency in these small, deliberate acts builds the robust mental framework necessary for enduring self-control. Self-control through awareness is not suppression, it is mastery. Awareness illuminates the mind's processes, exposing the triggers, impulses, and habitual reactions that previously ruled behavior unconsciously. With each instance of conscious observation and deliberate response, discipline grows, choices become more aligned with purpose, and actions reflect intention rather than compulsion. A man who commits to this path cultivates strength, clarity, and resilience that extend into every interaction, decision, and challenge. Over time, awareness transforms from a tool into an instinctive companion, ensuring that self-control is not occasional but constant, empowering a life led by intention, wisdom, and deliberate action. Number 6. Channel anger into productive action. Anger is one of the most potent forces in the human experience. Left unchecked, it can destroy relationships, cloud judgment, and erode self-respect. Yet, anger itself is not inherently negative. It is raw, unfocused. It becomes destructive. But when harnessed deliberately, it transforms into a driving force for meaningful action. The difference lies in channeling the emotion rather than allowing it to channel you. Learning to redirect anger requires awareness, strategy, and disciplined practice, turning a potentially chaotic force into a catalyst for productivity, clarity, and personal growth. The first step is acknowledgement. Anger often arrives suddenly, accompanied by tension in the body, racing thoughts, and a surge of adrenaline. Recognizing the emotion without judgment is critical. Denying or suppressing anger only allows it to fester, leading to outbursts or passive-aggressive behavior. Observing its presence, I am feeling anger, creates the mental space necessary to direct its energy constructively. Awareness is not weakness, it is the foundational act of self-mastery. Next, identify the source. Anger rarely exists in a vacuum. It usually emerges from perceived injustice, unmet expectations, frustration, or threat to values. Pinpointing the cause, whether external, such as someone's behavior, or internal, such as fear or insecurity, prevents misdirected reactions. By understanding the origin, a man gains clarity on where energy should be focused and how it can be redirected toward a productive outcome. Physical control is essential when anger peaks. The body's natural response includes tension, rapid breathing, and increased heart rate, all of which prime for reactive behavior. Intentionally slowing the breath, relaxing the shoulders, and grounding the feet provides immediate regulation. These physical adjustments create a buffer between emotion and action, allowing strategic decision-making. Anger has momentum, but it can be steered when the body is stabilized. Reframing anger is a powerful tool. Instead of viewing it solely as a negative response, see it as a signal, highlighting areas requiring attention. Anger can indicate where boundaries are crossed, where personal values are threatened, or where improvement is necessary. Transforming the perception of anger from destructive emotion into informative feedback allows it to fuel intentional problem-solving rather than destructive retaliation. This cognitive shift converts emotional intensity into strategic insight. Channeling anger into action requires deliberate redirection. Engage in tasks that require focus, energy, or discipline. Physical exercise is one of the most effective outlets. Running, lifting weights, martial arts, or high-intensity training allows the body to expend adrenaline while clearing mental tension. The rhythm, exertion, and physical engagement transform agitation into controlled energy, leaving the mind sharper and calmer. Action grounded in discipline transforms raw emotion into forward momentum. Creativity is another avenue for productive redirection. Anger can fuel writing, art, music, or problem solving. Use the heightened emotional state as fuel to produce, construct, or innovate. Transform frustration into a tangible outcome that advances goals. This approach not only channels energy but creates lasting value, converting emotion into constructive achievement rather than temporary venting. Goal alignment amplifies the power of channeled anger. Identify areas of personal or professional growth that require commitment, effort, or focus. Direct emotional energy toward tasks that advance these goals. Anger's intensity can accelerate discipline, persistence, and determination when intentionally applied to meaningful objectives. A surge of motivation directed toward personal improvement is one of the most effective ways to convert potentially harmful emotion into strategic advantage. Controlled expression and communication is critical. Anger often seeks verbal release, and uncontrolled expression can damage relationships and credibility. Practice assertive, composed communication. Use the emotion as a guide to clarify boundaries, communicate expectations, or address injustice without aggression. Thoughtful articulation allows anger to serve as a messenger rather than a weapon, transforming confrontation into constructive dialogue. Precision and clarity prevent escalation, while ensuring the underlying issue is addressed. Anticipating triggers strengthens mastery over anger. Reflect on situations, people, or circumstances that typically provoke strong reactions. Develop preemptive strategies to manage these instances, rehearsed responses, calming techniques, or structured routines. Predictable preparation transforms potential reactive moments into opportunities for deliberate practice. Each encounter becomes training, and repeated, intentional application reinforces the ability to harness emotion consistently. Mindfulness amplifies the capacity to channel anger. By observing internal sensations, thought patterns, and emotional surges without immediate engagement, a man cultivates a buffer between stimulus and response. Awareness of rising tension allows conscious redirection before behavior becomes reactive. Mindfulness trains attention, making energy from anger accessible for productive use rather than explosive release. Reflection and analysis solidify progress. After moments of anger, review what occurred, triggers, reactions, and strategies that worked or failed. Assess how energy could have been better channeled. Journaling these observations reinforces learning and builds a roadmap for future encounters. Reflection ensures that lessons are internalized, allowing for continuous refinement of emotional management and productive action. Accountability increases effectiveness. Sharing intentions to manage and redirect anger with a trusted mentor, coach, or friend provides external reinforcement. Constructive feedback identifies blind spots and validates progress. Peer perspective ensures that strategies remain practical and grounded, preventing unnoticed lapses that might undermine self-mastery. Balance between expression and containment is essential. Anger should neither be repressed nor left uncontrolled. Containment allows thoughtful evaluation, while strategic expression transforms energy into action. The man who masters this balance demonstrates maturity, strength, and leadership, commanding respect without resorting to aggression or avoidance. Channeling anger becomes a tool for influence, productivity, and principled action, rather than a source of conflict or regret. Long-term application requires consistency. Each moment of anger, when redirected effectively, strengthens neural pathways for disciplined action. Over time, emotional intensity no longer dictates behavior. The man who repeatedly channels anger into constructive endeavors develops resilience, strategic thinking, and a reputation for composure under pressure. Energy that once fueled chaos now drives achievement, problem-solving, and self-improvement. Immediate implementation begins with intentional observation. The next time anger arises, pause to identify the sensation, locate its source, and choose a deliberate channel for energy. Engage physical activity, constructive work, or measured communication. Reflect afterward on the outcome and adjust strategies accordingly. This repeated practice transforms a natural, volatile force into a powerful instrument for personal and professional growth. Anger, when mastered, becomes a catalyst. It sharpens focus, energizes effort, and highlights areas requiring attention. Channeling it transforms frustration into determination, irritation into problem-solving, and aggression into disciplined action. The man who learns to harness anger does not eliminate the emotion, he elevates it, converting instinctive reaction into purposeful, effective energy. Over time, this mastery amplifies strength, influence, and clarity, turning a potentially destructive force into a defining advantage in life. Number 7. Train your mind for emotional stability. The human mind is often like a wild river, swift and unpredictable, carrying currents of thought, emotion, and memory that pull in different directions. Stability does not mean the river stops flowing. It means learning to navigate the currents so that decisions, actions, and responses remain steady despite turbulence. Training the mind for emotional stability is not about suppressing feelings or pretending everything is calm. It is about cultivating resilience, awareness, and clarity so that the storms of life pass without destroying composure, purpose, or integrity. The first step in this process is understanding that the mind reacts automatically to stimuli. Thoughts trigger emotions, which in turn shape behavior. Many reactions are habitual, influenced by past experiences, unresolved fears, or ingrained patterns. Emotional instability often emerges from unconscious responses, repeated over time without awareness. The path to stability begins with observation, watching thoughts as they appear, noticing the body's physical reactions, and identifying the triggers that disrupt balance. Awareness is the anchor that allows the mind to operate from clarity rather than impulse. Daily mental exercises strengthen resilience. One effective practice is deliberate reflection on past reactions. Consider moments of emotional upheaval. What triggered the response? How did the mind interpret the situation? And how did the body react? Analyzing these experiences allows a man to identify patterns and recognize areas where intervention is possible. This practice transforms mistakes into lessons and creates a foundation for deliberate improvement. Reflection is not about self-criticism. It is the systematic training of perception, insight, and self-command. Mindfulness meditation is another cornerstone for cultivating stability. By sitting quietly and observing thoughts and emotions without attachment, the mind learns to experience sensations without immediate reaction. Simple exercises, such as focusing on the breath, scanning the body for tension, or noting passing thoughts, create an internal environment where clarity and calm become accessible at any moment. Regular practice rewires neural pathways, allowing even unexpected stressors to be met with steady attention, rather than reflexive agitation. Cognitive restructuring is essential. Emotional instability often results from distorted thinking, exaggerating threats, personalizing neutral events, or assuming the worst. Training the mind to question these patterns strengthens control. When a disruptive thought arises, pause and ask, is this fact or interpretation? What alternative perspective exists? What is the most constructive response? Repeated practice reduces the influence of automatic, reactive thoughts and encourages deliberate, balanced reasoning. Physical awareness reinforces mental stability. The body reacts before the conscious mind does, and unchecked physical tension can escalate emotional intensity. Simple routines, posture adjustments, deep breathing, grounding through the feet, or progressive muscle relaxation provide immediate regulation. By learning to detect and correct bodily cues, a man can moderate the intensity of emotional responses and maintain clearer, steadier thinking under stress. Developing routines strengthens predictability and emotional regulation. Consistent sleep, exercise, nutrition, and structured daily schedules reduce fluctuations caused by fatigue, hunger, or overstimulation. When the body and mind are well supported, emotional reactions are more proportional, allowing decisions to be made with calm assessment rather than heightened reactivity. Stability grows not only from conscious effort, but from consistent environmental and lifestyle support that reinforces resilience naturally. Exposure to controlled stress is a practical training technique. Facing challenges intentionally, in low-risk settings, allows the mind to practice composure before higher-stakes situations occur. Activities such as timed problem-solving, public speaking in small groups, or competitive sports provide pressure that strengthens emotional endurance. Each encounter teaches the mind to respond strategically rather than reactively, building confidence and adaptability that extends into more significant life challenges. Journaling serves as both observation and intervention. Writing down emotional experiences, triggers, and responses allows the mind to externalize internal chaos, identify recurring patterns, and test alternative responses. By recording lessons learned and strategies applied, a man builds a personal map of emotional regulation. This tangible reflection reinforces neural pathways for composure, turning insight into habitual response. Training the mind also involves reinforcing positive self-talk. The language we use internally shapes perception and behavior. Replace reactive or judgmental thoughts. I can't handle this. This is too much. Or I always fail with deliberate statements like I observe this feeling and choose my response. I am capable of measured action, or this moment is temporary and I control my reaction. Language is a tool to frame experience, regulate emotion, and maintain focus even under duress. Visualization strengthens preparedness. Mentally rehearsing potential scenarios that trigger strong emotions equips the mind for real-life encounters. Imagine heated conversations, high-pressure deadlines, or challenging social interactions. Visualize responding with calm, assertiveness, and clarity. The repetition trains the mind to access stability instinctively when similar situations arise in reality. Rehearsal reduces the shock factor of unexpected events, enabling controlled and strategic responses. Perspective-taking enhances emotional equilibrium. Viewing challenges from multiple angles diminishes the intensity of initial emotional reactions. Considering the motivations of others, the temporary nature of circumstances, and the broader context of events allows a man to respond without escalation. Stability is reinforced when responses are guided by clarity rather than the immediacy of emotional impulses. Accountability accelerates growth. Sharing intentions to cultivate emotional stability with a mentor, peer, or trusted advisor provides external observation, constructive feedback, and reinforcement. External perspectives reveal blind spots the mind may miss and validate progress, creating a feedback loop that strengthens self-mastery. Accountability complements internal training, ensuring lessons translate into consistent, observable behavior. Resilience develops through consistent practice over time. Each instance of measured response, deliberate reflection, and controlled exposure to stress compounds, fortifying the mind against future disruption. Emotional stability is built incrementally, with small victories reinforcing larger ones. The cumulative effect is a baseline of calm, clarity, and composure that persists even under intense pressure. Lifestyle factors continue to influence mental stability. Sleep deprivation, poor nutrition, and chronic stress undermine the capacity to maintain composure. Mind and body function as a single system. Optimizing physical well-being directly enhances emotional regulation. Daily habits, when aligned with stability goals, create a foundation that allows conscious mental training to be more effective and sustainable. Immediate application begins with deliberate observation. Throughout the day, note moments of emotional fluctuation, recording physical cues, thought patterns, and impulses. Pause before reacting, reflect on the most constructive response, and implement it consciously. Use physical regulation, reframing, and mindfulness to maintain composure. Reflect at the end of the day on successes and areas for improvement, reinforcing awareness and strengthening the habit of stability. The ultimate goal is a mind that operates with equilibrium regardless of external chaos. Emotional stability allows a man to act strategically, respond with integrity, and maintain consistency in behavior. Stability does not remove emotion, it harnesses it, directing energy toward constructive outcomes rather than impulsive reactions. A trained mind interprets challenges as opportunities, navigates adversity with calm efficiency, and exerts influence without surrendering to volatility. Training the mind for emotional stability is a lifelong practice. Awareness, reflection, mindfulness, physical regulation, rehearsal, perspective, accountability, and lifestyle optimization all converge to cultivate a resilient, measured, and composed temperament. Each deliberate effort reinforces neural pathways, creating a durable foundation for clear thought and decisive action. Over time, the mind becomes a reliable instrument, capable of navigating the unpredictability of life without being tossed by transient emotional current. Emotional stability transforms from a goal into a default state, defining the character and influence of a man who chooses clarity, resilience, and control in every moment. Number 8. Detach ego from emotional reactions. The human mind is often like a wild river, swift and unpredictable, carrying currents of thought, emotion, and memory that pull in different directions. Stability does not mean the river stops flowing. It means learning to navigate the currents so that decisions, actions, and responses remain steady despite turbulence. Training the mind for emotional stability is not about suppressing feelings or pretending everything is calm. It is about cultivating resilience, awareness, and clarity so that the storms of life pass without destroying composure, purpose, or integrity. The first step in this process is understanding that the mind reacts automatically to stimuli. Thoughts trigger emotions, which in turn shape behavior. Many reactions are habitual, influenced by past experiences, unresolved fears, or ingrained patterns. Emotional instability often emerges from unconscious responses, repeated over time without awareness. The path to stability begins with observation, watching thoughts as they appear, noticing the body's physical reactions, and identifying the triggers that disrupt balance. Awareness is the anchor that allows the mind to operate from clarity rather than impulse. Daily mental exercises strengthen resilience. One effective practice is deliberate reflection on past reactions. Consider moments of emotional upheaval. What triggered the response? How did the mind interpret the situation? And how did the body react? Analyzing these experiences allows a man to identify patterns and recognize areas where intervention is possible. This practice transforms mistakes into lessons and creates a foundation for deliberate improvement. Reflection is not about self-criticism. It is the systematic training of perception, insight, and self-command. Mindfulness meditation is another cornerstone for cultivating stability. By sitting quietly and observing thoughts and emotions without attachment, the mind learns to experience sensations without immediate reaction. Simple exercises, such as focusing on the breath, scanning the body for tension, or noting passing thoughts, create an internal environment where clarity and calm become accessible at any moment. Regular practice rewires neural pathways, allowing even unexpected stressors to be met with steady attention rather than reflexive agitation. Cognitive restructuring is essential. Emotional instability often results from distorted thinking, exaggerating threats, personalizing neutral events, or assuming the worst. Training the mind to question these patterns strengthens control. When a disruptive thought arises, pause and ask, is this fact or interpretation? What alternative perspective exists? What is the most constructive response? Repeated practice reduces the influence of automatic, reactive thoughts and encourages deliberate, balanced reasoning. Physical awareness reinforces mental stability. The body reacts before the conscious mind does, and unchecked physical tension can escalate emotional intensity. Simple routines, posture adjustments, deep breathing, grounding through the feet, or progressive muscle relaxation provide immediate regulation. By learning to detect and correct bodily cues, a man can moderate the intensity of emotional responses and maintain clearer, steadier thinking under stress. Developing routines strengthens predictability and emotional regulation. Consistent sleep, exercise, nutrition, and structured daily schedules reduce fluctuations caused by fatigue, hunger, or overstimulation. When the body and mind are well supported, emotional reactions are more proportional, allowing decisions to be made with calm assessment rather than heightened reactivity. Stability grows not only from conscious effort but from consistent environmental and lifestyle support that reinforces resilience naturally. Exposure to controlled stress is a practical training technique. Facing challenges intentionally in low-risk settings allows the mind to practice composure before higher-stakes situations occur. Activities such as timed problem-solving, public speaking in small groups, or competitive sports provide pressure that strengthens emotional endurance. Each encounter teaches the mind to respond strategically rather than reactively, building confidence and adaptability that extends into more significant life challenges. Journaling serves as both observation and intervention. Writing down emotional experiences, triggers, and responses allows the mind to externalize internal chaos, identify recurring patterns, and test alternative responses. By recording lessons learned and strategies applied, a man builds a personal map of emotional regulation. This tangible reflection reinforces neural pathways for composure, turning insight into habitual response. Training the mind also involves reinforcing positive self-talk. The language we use internally shapes perception and behavior. Replace reactive or judgmental thoughts. I can't handle this. This is too much. Or I always fail with deliberate statements like, I observe this feeling and choose my response. I am capable of measured action. Or this moment is temporary, and I control my reaction. Language is a tool to frame experience, regulate emotion, and maintain focus even under duress. Visualization strengthens preparedness. Mentally rehearsing potential scenarios that trigger strong emotions equips the mind for real-life encounters. Imagine heated conversations, high-pressured deadlines, or challenging social interactions. Visualize responding with calm, assertiveness, and clarity. The repetition trains the mind to access stability instinctively when similar situations arise in reality. Rehearsal reduces the shock factor of unexpected events, enabling controlled and strategic responses. Perspective-taking enhances emotional equilibrium. Viewing challenges from multiple angles diminishes the intensity of initial emotional reactions. Considering the motivations of others, the temporary nature of circumstances, and the broader context of events allows a man to respond without escalation. Stability is reinforced when responses are guided by clarity rather than the immediacy of emotional impulses. Accountability accelerates growth. Sharing intentions to cultivate emotional stability with a mentor, peer, or trusted advisor provides external observation, constructive feedback, and reinforcement. External perspectives reveal blind spots the mind may miss and validate progress, creating a feedback loop that strengthens self-mastery. Accountability complements internal training, ensuring lessons translate into consistent, observable behavior. Resilience develops through consistent practice over time. Each instance of measured response, deliberate reflection, and controlled exposure to stress compounds, fortifying the mind against future disruption. Emotional stability is built incrementally, with small victories reinforcing larger ones. The cumulative effect is a baseline of calm, clarity, and composure that persists even under intense pressure. Lifestyle factors continue to influence mental stability. Sleep deprivation, poor nutrition, and chronic stress undermine the capacity to maintain composure. Mind and body function as a single system. Optimizing physical well-being directly enhances emotional regulation. Daily habits, when aligned with stability goals, create a foundation that allows conscious mental training to be more effective and sustainable. Immediate application begins with deliberate observation. Throughout the day, note moments of emotional fluctuation, recording physical cues, thought patterns, and impulses. Pause before reacting, reflect on the most constructive response, and implement it consciously. Use physical regulation, reframing, and mindfulness to maintain composure. Reflect at the end of the day on successes and areas for improvement, reinforcing awareness and strengthening the habit of stability. The ultimate goal is a mind that operates with equilibrium, regardless of external chaos. Emotional stability allows a man to act strategically, respond with integrity, and maintain consistency in behavior. Stability does not remove emotion, it harnesses it, directing energy toward constructive outcomes rather than impulsive reactions. A trained mind interprets challenges as opportunities, navigates adversity with calm efficiency, and exerts influence without surrendering to volatility. Training the mind for emotional stability is a lifelong practice. Awareness, reflection, mindfulness, physical regulation, rehearsal, perspective, accountability, and lifestyle optimization all converge to cultivate a resilient, measured, and composed temperament. Each deliberate effort reinforces neural pathways, creating a durable foundation for clear thought and decisive action. Over time, the mind becomes a reliable instrument, capable of navigating the unpredictability of life without being tossed by transient emotional currents. Emotional stability transforms from a goal into a default state, defining the character and influence of a man who chooses clarity, resilience, and control in every moment. Number 9. Develop calm confidence in conflict. Ego is the lens through which most emotional reactions are filtered, often magnifying minor provocations into crises and turning challenges into personal affronts. It thrives on validation, pride, and the need to assert control, And when it dominates, it distorts perception, intensifies reaction, and undermines reason. Detaching ego from emotional responses does not mean abandoning self-respect or values. It means observing situations objectively, responding from clarity rather than pride, and ensuring that emotion serves purpose, rather than feeding the need for validation. Mastery over ego is essential for a man seeking consistent composure, influence, and inner strength. The first step in this process is awareness of the ego's influence. Emotions often arrive with an underlying narrative. A slight feels like insult, criticism feels like attack, or disagreement feels like personal failure. Recognizing that these reactions originate from ego rather than objective reality allows the mind to pause and assess the situation rationally. Awareness is not detachment through denial. It is clarity that separates the self from the automatic need to defend, prove, or assert. Understanding the triggers of ego-driven reactions is essential. Many are rooted in insecurity, past experiences, or social conditioning. Compliments, criticism, challenges, or failures can provoke strong responses because they are interpreted as threats or validations of identity. By mapping triggers and recognizing patterns, a man can anticipate moments where ego may hijack judgment, allowing conscious intervention before reactive behavior takes control. Knowledge of these patterns transforms vulnerability into opportunity for mastery. Perspective taking diminishes the grip of ego. Stepping outside oneself and considering situations from a broader viewpoint, acknowledging the intentions, limitations, and perspectives of others, reduces the immediacy of defensive reactions. Observing interactions without immediate identification with perceived slights fosters empathy and rational evaluation. Ego thrives in isolation, reacting to perceived threats without context. Perspective provides the context necessary to respond constructively. Language shapes how ego is expressed and contained. Internal dialogue often reinforces self-centered interpretation. They are disrespecting me. I cannot let this happen, or I must prove I am right. By consciously reframing these thoughts, this is their perspective, not a judgment of my value. I choose my response, or I focus on what is constructive. Ego loses dominance over emotional response. Deliberate language trains the mind to prioritize rational choice over reactive assertion. Physical regulation reinforces psychological detachment from ego. Strong emotions often manifest bodily: flushed face, clenched jaw, rapid heartbeat, or tension in the shoulders. Recognizing these cues and implementing controlled breathing, grounding techniques, or posture adjustments interrupts the reflexive chain from ego to reaction. The body's state influences the mind. Calming the physical response creates space for thoughtful, ego-free action. Acceptance is a crucial principle. The ego resists loss, criticism, and limitation, seeking control over circumstances and perceptions. Acceptance does not equate to passivity. It means acknowledging reality without unnecessary judgment or defensiveness. When a man accepts events, feedback, or failure objectively, he disarms the ego's impulse to react defensively. Energy previously spent on protection and assertion is redirected toward problem-solving, learning, and deliberate response. Practicing humility strengthens detachment from ego. Humility is not weakness. It is the conscious recognition of limits, interdependence, and the value of others' perspectives. By embracing humility, a man reduces the emotional charge of slights or challenges, allowing composure and reason to prevail. Humility reframes events. They are opportunities for growth rather than threats to identity. Mindfulness develops sustained awareness of ego's influence. Regular attention to thoughts, sensations, and impulses fosters recognition of the moments when ego drives emotional reactions. Observing these tendencies without judgment allows deliberate choice to intervene before automatic responses take over. Mindfulness creates a buffer, a space where emotion is experienced without being dictated by pride, defensiveness, or the need for validation. Reframing conflict transforms interactions. Ego-driven responses escalate disagreements into personal battles, often causing unnecessary tension or lasting resentment. Viewing conflicts as neutral events, challenges to navigate rather than personal attacks, shifts emotional energy from self-defense to constructive engagement. This reframing allows for effective communication, problem resolution, and influence without the distortion of ego. Accountability enhances mastery over ego. Sharing intentions with mentors, trusted peers, or advisors provides external perspective, highlighting blind spots where pride or defensiveness dominate. Feedback reinforces self-awareness and ensures that detachment from ego is not merely theoretical but observable in behavior. External accountability complements internal discipline, accelerating development and reinforcing sustainable emotional control. Reflection consolidates learning. After interactions or situations where ego could have dictated reaction, review behavior, which impulses were ego-driven, which strategies allowed detachment, and how might responses improve. Recording observations strengthens memory and reinforces patterns of deliberate, ego-free behavior. Reflection transforms isolated incidents into systematic growth, gradually diminishing the ego's influence over emotional life. Channeling energy formerly consumed by ego into purposeful action amplifies effectiveness. Instead of reacting to perceived slights or asserting dominance, the focus shifts toward goals, principles, and constructive tasks. Emotional energy is harnessed as a resource for problem-solving, creativity, or personal growth rather than being expended on defending identity. Productive channeling turns potential conflict into achievement, reinforcing the benefits of detachment. Gradual exposure to ego-triggering situations serves as practical training. By intentionally engaging in circumstances that provoke pride, defensiveness, or perceived insult, a man can practice detachment in real time. These controlled exposures build resilience, strengthen awareness, and solidify skills in recognizing ego-driven impulses before they manifest as reactive behavior. Repeated practice transforms theory into instinctive discipline. Detachment from ego does not eliminate emotion. Anger, frustration, disappointment, or pride may still arise, but they no longer dictate reaction. Emotions are experienced fully yet processed with rational clarity and deliberate choice. This distinction creates inner calm, consistency in behavior, and the ability to navigate social interactions with influence, integrity, and composure. Emotional life becomes richer, more accurate, and strategically aligned with purpose, rather than hijacked by pride or insecurity. Immediate practice begins with observation. Throughout daily life, note moments when ego shapes perception or reaction. Identify sensations, thoughts, and triggers, then pause before responding. Implement techniques such as reframing, perspective taking, controlled breathing, or mindful detachment. Reflect afterward on outcomes and refine strategies. Each intentional intervention strengthens the capacity to respond from clarity rather than ego, gradually transforming default reactions into deliberate, principled behavior. Detaching ego from emotional reactions cultivates freedom. A man no longer responds to perceived attacks, slights, or judgments with defensiveness or pride. Instead, he acts from reason, principle, and purpose. Relationships improve as interactions become less reactive and more constructive. Decisions are clearer, energy is directed toward meaningful outcomes, and personal influence grows. Detachment from ego is not denial of self, it is mastery over self, converting the raw intensity of emotion into deliberate, effective action. Over time, this practice defines a temperament that is calm, strategic, and unshakable, allowing a man to navigate life with composure, wisdom, and consistent strength. Number 10. Practice emotional control daily. Emotional control is not a talent reserved for the naturally composed. It is a skill cultivated through consistent effort, conscious practice, and deliberate awareness. Life constantly challenges a man with unpredictable events, interpersonal tension, stress, and temptation. Without regular practice, emotions, anger, frustration, anxiety, or impulsive desire can dominate behavior, decisions, and relationships. Daily practice of emotional control transforms instinctive reactions into deliberate, value-aligned responses, ensuring that energy is directed toward purpose rather than dissipated in unproductive turbulence. The first step in developing daily emotional control is recognition of emotional patterns. Observe the mind and body closely throughout each day, noting moments of agitation, irritation, excitement, or fear. Physical cues, tense muscles, shallow breath, rapid heartbeat, often signal rising emotion before conscious thought fully registers it. Mental patterns, including repetitive negative thinking, judgmental self-talk, or fixation on outcomes, provide additional insight into emotional tendencies. Identifying these signals is not self-criticism. It is the foundation for mastery, providing data to guide deliberate response rather than reflexive reaction. Once emotional patterns are recognized, structured practices can be implemented. Short intervals of mindfulness meditation cultivate moment-to-moment awareness, training the mind to observe sensations, thoughts, and impulses without immediately acting on them. Even 5 to 10 minutes per day can strengthen neural pathways that support self-regulation, allowing emotion to be experienced fully while preventing it from dictating behavior. Over time, mindfulness expands beyond formal practice into everyday activities, creating sustained awareness throughout interactions and decision-making. Journaling reinforces awareness and accountability. Recording emotional experiences, triggers, and responses allows reflection on patterns and outcomes. Analyze how emotions influence decisions, whether reactions aligned with values, and what adjustments might improve future responses. Daily documentation consolidates learning, providing a concrete record of progress and enabling targeted practice. Consistent review of this journal develops insight, strengthens mental resilience, and reinforces the habit of responding consciously rather than reacting automatically. Controlled breathing is an immediate and practical tool for managing emotional surges. Deliberate inhalation and exhalation regulate the autonomic nervous system, slowing the heart rate, reducing tension, and creating cognitive clarity. When practiced daily, controlled breathing becomes a reflexive resource that can be deployed in moments of stress, anger, or anxiety, ensuring that initial impulses do not overpower reasoned judgment. Physical regulation directly supports mental control, making emotional discipline more attainable and sustainable. Visualization and mental rehearsal complement direct emotional practice. Anticipate daily situations likely to trigger strong reactions, conversations, deadlines, confrontations, or unexpected challenges. Mentally rehearse responding with composure, measured language, and deliberate actions. Visualizing calm, confident responses primes the nervous system, reduces the likelihood of reactive behavior, and builds mental familiarity with composure under stress. Repetition solidifies these mental scripts, making controlled responses instinctive when faced with real-life triggers. Daily challenges should be embraced intentionally. Exposure to minor stressors, inconvenience, or irritation creates opportunities to practice restraint, measured reaction, and patience. This could include responding calmly to criticism, delaying gratification, or navigating difficult interactions with composure. Each instance reinforces neural pathways for self-control and prepares the mind for more significant challenges. Emotional control is honed in ordinary moments, as much as in extraordinary crises. Reflection strengthens long-term growth. At the end of each day, evaluate how emotions influence decisions and interactions. Identify moments where responses aligned with values, where impulses were managed effectively, and where improvement is possible. Reflection transforms ordinary experiences into deliberate practice, turning daily life into a continuous training ground for emotional mastery. Over time, this feedback loop enhances self-awareness, accountability, and strategic response. Physical health supports emotional stability. Fatigue, poor nutrition, and chronic stress amplify susceptibility to impulsive or disproportionate reactions. Daily habits, such as adequate sleep, regular exercise, balanced diet, and deliberate rest, strengthen the body's capacity to support cognitive control and emotional regulation. Emotional discipline is intimately connected to physical resilience. A well-maintained body creates the foundation for a controlled, responsive mind. Language and internal dialogue shape perception and response. Daily attention to self-talk, shifting from judgmental, reactive phrases to constructive, deliberate statements, reinforces control. Replace thoughts like, "I can't handle this," with "I choose my response," or "This moment is temporary, and I act with purpose." Language is a tool for framing experience, regulating emotion, and strengthening the habitual patterns that support consistent self-discipline. Accountability amplifies practice. Engaging a mentor, trusted friend, or advisor to review responses, discuss challenges, and provide constructive feedback accelerates mastery. Daily commitment to improvement, reinforced through accountability, ensures that emotional control is not aspirational but observable and measurable. External reinforcement complements internal practice, providing perspective, validation, and guidance. Gradual escalation of difficulty enhances skill. Begin with low-stakes challenges to practice composure and deliberate response, then progress to higher-pressure situations. Each successful encounter strengthens confidence and resilience, making emotional control more reliable under intense circumstances. Daily practice ensures that the mind becomes accustomed to maintaining calm, even when external conditions are unpredictable or stressful. Emotional regulation includes acceptance of discomfort. Many emotional surges are triggered by resistance to reality, unmet expectations, or desire for control. Daily practice involves observing and accepting emotions without immediate judgment or suppression. Acceptance does not equate to passivity. It allows energy to be processed constructively, freeing the mind to act intentionally rather than reactively. Over time, acceptance reduces emotional volatility and enhances consistent self-mastery. Integration of these practices transforms habit. Emotional control becomes part of the mental architecture rather than a sporadic effort. Daily repetition, awareness, mindfulness, journaling, physical regulation, reflection, accountability, and exposure to challenge cements neural pathways that support sustained composure, rational decision-making, and deliberate action. The mind becomes resilient, responsive, and aligned with long-term objectives rather than fleeting impulses. Immediate application begins with intentional observation and practice in everyday life. Notice emotional surges, pause, and implement strategies such as mindful breathing, reflection, or cognitive reframing. Approach daily interactions with the intention of practicing composure and deliberate response. Each small instance compounds over time, strengthening the ability to manage emotion in increasingly complex situations. Daily effort transforms emotional control from a conscious task into an automatic, reliable skill. Daily practice of emotional control cultivates freedom, clarity, and resilience. A man who consistently exercises discipline over his reactions is not dominated by circumstances, provocation, or internal impulses. He acts with purpose, maintains composure under pressure, and aligns behavior with values and long-term goals. Emotional mastery ensures that energy is directed toward productive, meaningful action, turning potential chaos into consistent influence, strategic decision-making, and personal empowerment. Through persistent daily practice, emotional control becomes instinctive. Challenges are met with measured response, conflict is navigated with composure, and decision-making is guided by clarity rather than reaction. Over time, this consistent discipline shapes character, influence, and resilience, ensuring that a man's behavior reflects intention, wisdom, and self-mastery in every moment. Emotional control practiced daily is the cornerstone of strength, leadership, and purposeful living, creating a foundation for enduring success and fulfillment.